you're going to find out a lot about yourself, and you've got to take a lot of responsibility for potentially some of the stuff that you've done to yourself and the harm that you've done. And that can be really hard for people to actually stomach and swallow, to then actually move to the peace that they actually want.
True change is very humbling
Mm-hmm.
because I love that. I love what you said about you're essentially going to war with yourself because you are going to essentially transform and change at the end. In order to be this person that you envision, you have to change.
Welcome to the Primal Life Project Podcast, a place to help you unlock your full potential, both mentally and physically, to become the best version of you. Welcome back to an episode of the Primal Life Project Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel James, and today I'm delighted to welcome Katie Jackson. Katie Jackson helps mothers transform into confident, energetic women so they can balance time, pursue passions, and inspire their children. So I know there's going to be a lot of you listening that can really take some value out of today's episode. So welcome, Katie. How are we?
Doing well. Doing well. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me, Daniel.
Now, I'm really looking forward to this because obviously when we spoke before off air, the first time we spoke, the whole sort of conversation and sort of where we're going to go today, I think there's a lot of mothers out there that are feeling very, very stuck and almost feeling a bit out of control with a lot of things. And the fact of your whole thing is to help empower them. I love that because that's, for me, that's the biggest thing, the gift we can give someone, just that gift of empowerment to realize they can sort of get themselves out. But can you sort of just take my audience back a little bit into what actually got you onto this journey? Like, why is this such a passion thing for you? Like, where's this passion to do this come from?
Yeah, sure. Ever since I graduated high school, I knew that I always wanted to start my own business, but I didn't know and necessarily what that was going to be. I knew it would be in some sort of category involving wellness and fitness, but after I graduated college, I got an internship and I did more corporate wellness, and then that's kind of where my career took me, and I loved it. I loved every minute of it. And then early on in my career, I became a mom and discovered the many, many challenges of working full time, being a mom, trying to cover daycare costs, and then coordinate with my husband because he had a pretty demanding job as well. And I started to notice this sort of change in me. I became extremely stressed 24/7 from the moment I woke up to the moment I hit the pillow. Like even when my head hit the pillow, I was still stressed.
Mm.
So I even though I was in the health and wellness industry and I was sort of personal training and helping my clients make their lives be more centered around their personal wellness, my personal wellness fell by the wayside. And I completely put their needs and like my works needs and my daughter's needs and my husband's needs like all in front. And like my needs just kind of went out the window because I felt very out of control and not knowing what to expect every day. And when you're a first time mom, that's a very common feeling because you have your work and your job telling you what they need from you, and you're like, okay. And then you have like the school or the daycare or babysitter essentially telling you what they need from you. And then so those are things that you feel like it's out of your control.
Mm.
So I just essentially became really stressed. I started to evolve a lot, um, have a lot of digestive issues, and went on like this acid reducer medicine for a short period of time. And then, as everything was kind of coming to a head, where I felt like this really high level of intense stress, I COVID hit.
Mm.
And then, so I was lucky enough to be able to work from home, just like some other people. I taught my classes from home. I trained online. I did everything I could basically. And I had a moment, probably, it was actually around this time, like about 3 years ago. And I am Catholic. So in this time period, we're in the season of Lent. So what Lent is about is it's about walking with Jesus essentially to make yourself a better person. Like what am I doing? How can I best serve others? Is like the common theme. You like put others before yourself, or you put yourself, right? And then you like serve others in the
Mm-hmm.
meantime. Um and I started praying a lot more. I started going to, it's called confession. So where we go before a priest and we start talking about things in areas where we want to improve our life on. And I just got to thinking that I was like, what am I doing? Like, I'm supposed to be living this life full of like adventure, and I'm supposed to be like like happy, like content with my life, and I feel very out of control. I feel very stressed out. And it's not that I wasn't enjoying motherhood at the time. It's just I felt like my responsibilities were greater than the rewards.
Mm.
Like, if I'm gonna speak the truth, I'm just like, "This is such a gift." Like, I love my child, but I just felt like my world was full of chores and full of responsibilities and nothing else. Like, it
Mm-hmm.
was just kind of gray. So,
So when you mentioned about
um
because you mentioned we were stressed a few times, can you just explain like what that feeling was
mhm,
like for you? Like when you say like
mhm.
you were feeling stressed, like how was that manifesting in your life? Like what did that look like for you?
So, it was like either my daughter was sick, and then I had to change around my work schedule. It just felt like constant chaos. Like there was either something at work I needed to address, or my daughter was sick, or something was going on with the house. It was the stress of everyday life needs, and I didn't know how to deal with it. I felt like all these things were being thrown at me, and because I didn't have like any passions or hobbies, like I wasn't expressing those. I wasn't expressing my own, I wasn't getting the self-care I needed. I just felt like it was all so much. And even if I wanted that, I couldn't make time for it. I didn't have the budget for it. And can probably feel like the anxiety of like coming from me as I'm
Mm.
like listing all of these things. And that I think that's really where it hit. Like is just the stress and anxiety of all of those responsibilities. Um and
Did you
then
become quite closed off from that then? Like, was there, I'm trying to
mhm.
think for lack of a better word, but was there any sort of like resentment towards the child of like, you're causing this? Obviously, they haven't caused anything, but was there any sort of like resentment? Was there any sort of buildup of that? Was there any frictional tension with your husband? Like, was there any things like externally apart from, for lack of a better word, the chaos that was going on inside of you? Was there any other stuff that was happening as well?
Yeah. So as far as towards my child, I didn't really resent them. It's just the fact that like if they weren't being like if I wanted my daughter to go to sleep and she was having trouble that night and really needed me, it's like, oh, like I just felt like it was another thing on my plate. And then like my husband's, if he was having a hard time at work, like I felt if I wanted to support him. And so if I put all my energy into supporting him, then I had like nothing left.
Hmm.
So for myself, basically, which is a common theme of us moms. We sometimes put in all of our energy towards all the other things and we have nothing left for ourselves. So,
And it gets almost like the breaking point, I imagine. So the way you describe it out, the
mhm,
picture you're sort of painting is like a cup. I just picture a cup with all these cracks, and again, just like these cracks, just and water just coming out of it, and then you're just left with this empty cup because you've given everything away to everybody else. And then, of
yeah.
course, you're going to get to that stage where something's got to give. So, what did that sort of moment look like for you then, where you kind of like got to the moment where something changed? Like, what was that for you?
Yeah. So it's really odd because it was just this one night, and I don't know what it was about this one night. I'm still trying to figure it out. But I was putting my second child, so all the time this is going on, I was putting my second child to bed. So I had
So, so,
another
so, so,
baby.
so, how old was the second child?
So she was about 6 months.
And then how old was the first child?
She was about, let's see, that would have made her 3.5 or 4.
So you were feeling this way for
Yeah.
about 4 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Just again,
Yeah.
just to get the picture. This is like a 4 year
Yeah.
thing. So this isn't like a
Yeah.
quick like year long or 6 months. This is like a 4 year thing. Okay, wow, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Put it in perspective, because it's like you're just not, when you're not aware and you're just feel like things are being thrown at you every day, you're just spending your day reacting, and
Mm,
you don't, and then it's like, oh, it's bedtime, and if
mm,
that's how you live your life for every day for a really long time. So I started developing these physical symptoms, and what happens then is you start to develop these other thoughts, like mentally you're not well, you have this very negative mindset. So I'm putting my daughter to bed, and like I said, still trying to figure out what it was about this one night. But I was thinking about how if she became a mom someday, how is she going to react to the things that I deal with on a daily basis? And I wanted all these things for her. I wanted her to go after her passions. You want your kids to live your dreams. You want them to be not afraid to express who they are. You want them to have this dream career. But never stop to realize that we serve as those examples.
mm,
So when she thinks in her mind, like, what is a mom, and pictures her mom, she's going to picture who I am and how I deal with things. Right. So I started to come to this realization that if I wanted these things for my kids and I wanted to inspire them, I was going to have to change.
mm,
Like, I was going to have to put in the work and change what was going on. And so I'm like sitting there having this epiphany in my messy bun and my like drabby jammies, and there's like toys everywhere, and the diaper pail is full, and I'm like, I don't even know what time it was. I think it was like 11 o'clock at night. And I was like, stood up and I was like, I'm going to change my life. And you could kind of picture it. Um, and so I put her to bed, and like the very next day, I was like, okay, well, what do I need to change first? Like, what
mm,
needs to change? There's clearly a lot of things I want to change here. But the first thing I did was go back to my basic needs, which was proper nutrition, meal prepping for myself in a way that was really simple, and I wasn't going to create more stress. And then participating in movement or exercise that nourished my body, instead of being so tempted by like the result I wanted, but it didn't really fit with my body and my lifestyle that I
mm.
had. Right.
Yeah, yeah. It's just like almost like you're trying to have the
Yeah.
pre-mum body and gym routine and exercise, and it doesn't really work after you've had kids because you can't commit that time, energy, and effort into it. So it's just kind of like
Yeah.
realigning the expectation with the reality.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wanted to feel good. And like, just like every woman, I wanted to look good, but I had in my mind, as being a fitness professional, I knew what the reality of that was and where I could get. So essentially, I had to take myself back to school and say, okay, here are the things that I could do, and this would be a great result for me. So I just wanted to be injury free. I wanted to be toned. I wanted to feel good and have energy. So that was like my goal. So so then once I got a handle on that, I was like, okay, I want to do something for myself. I have no idea where to start. So I did a lot of prayer. I thought about like my childhood, and I was absolutely obsessed with horses. Like, loved horses, and took lessons when I was younger. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to look into horses. And I had completely written it off as an adult, because I was in that world long enough to know that horses are very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
The whole world is very expensive. So I was like, nope, like, I'm a responsible adult now. I can't think about things that are extra, which is like really sad.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we do that a lot to ourselves.
I think
So
that when I go into schools, I'm talking schools, I basically
yeah.
say to the kids about, I get to put their hands up, like, who here has something they enjoy doing and find fun, and they'll put their hands up. And I basically say, don't ever stop doing that, because that's why most adults are miserable. They stop
Hmm.
doing the things they love doing, and you want to see the look on the teachers' faces, because the teachers there, like, it like hits them, because you can see
Yeah.
they've just suddenly realised oh yeah, like I'm not doing any of the things that I love doing. So I laugh and joke with the kids saying I still play computer games. The difference is like
Yeah,
I make
yeah.
my money first, I do my
Hmm.
stuff, and then I play computer games. Like it's just understanding that you've got to find that balance, that trade off. But again, as long as it's not hurting anybody, as long as you're not spending excessive amounts of money doing it, and again, bankrupting
Hmm.
your family, and as long as it's ethical,
Right.
moral, legal, like do you know what I mean? Just keep doing that thing that you enjoy doing, whether it's Warhammer, computer games, skateboarding, whatever it is. Like just keep doing it as an adult because I feel like part of us dies, that part of that inner child dies. We
Yes.
stop doing it, and then life just gets on top of us, and we don't have that release and that way to express ourselves. Because for me, the best thing ever, I'm not sure if you found this yourself, is as I mentioned before, I'm not a dad, I'm technically a stepdad, and he's really got into colouring and Pokemon and stuff. So I've now got into Pokemon. I then started
Yeah.
doing some colouring and drawing, and it's so therapeutic. And every time I do it, I feel like a part of me bizarrely heals. I find it
Yeah.
so therapeutic, and it's like this is what I needed to do. I
Hmm.
needed to just kind of like listen to what young Daniel wanted. I know we kind of get a bit off topic here about inner child work, but it's just so bizarre to think that we just lose a bit of ourselves just to be an adult. And it's like, for
Yeah.
what? For what?
Well, we stop playing. We stop trying things and we forget we forget how to play because we've told ourselves no for so long. And so essentially that's what I had to do is I had to retrain my brain to stop that. And a lot of it just had to do with awareness.
Mm.
And so when that came up again, I was like, no, go check it out and like give yourself good reason to say no. Give yourself a good reason to say no. So I went and checked it out and I was like, this is not as expensive as I thought it was going to
Mm.
be. And by the way, this ranch is really close. It's about 20 minutes from me. So I was thinking, wow, I could make this work. So I talked with my husband and his schedule. And now to this day, I still go once a week on Fridays. And it's like the best thing ever. It's the
Mm.
best thing ever. I get to connect with these animals. Some of these, they're a rescue ranch. So some of these animals have really been through it.
Mm.
They've really been through it. And to be able to come back from what they've come back from is like a huge inspiring story. So it puts your perspective into check and you have a huge amount of respect for these animals and you have this exchange where there's like this sort of understanding. And what I find fascinating about horses is that they can sense your heartbeat from, I forgot how many feet it was away. It was pretty astounding though. They give off like this energetic field and they can sense around them
Mm.
if you're nervous or if you're calm or if you're angry. And
Well,
yeah,
they
I
give
find
off
it
an
fascinating.
energetic field, and so do we. So
Hmm.
again, it's both, and
Hmm.
I think when it comes to parenthood, again, kind of linking back to something you said there about like inspiring your children. I think that's something that parents don't necessarily realize is that the energy they're giving off, the kids pick up on. Like kids pick up on energy so well. That's why sometimes the kids don't like people for whatever reason. Like the reason why they don't like people is because they can pick up on the energy, and
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? They're very very in tune with that. So again, it's just as parents, like if your life is chaos. And if you're giving off all that anxiety, is it any wonder why then the child is mirroring that back to you? And it's something that we
Hmm.
said when we originally spoke in our initial chat about the impact that we actually have on our kids and the fact they see everything. They don't really care
Yes.
about what you say. They
Hmm.
care about what you actually do. And as you sort of mentioned, as your child gets older, like, well, what does it mean to be a mum? What does it mean to be in a relationship? What does that look like? Because kids are essentially just this empty bowl that we have to
Yeah.
program. So we're programming it, and it's like what we actually program them with, what examples and what models are we actually giving them, what models of parenthood, of relationships, of self care. All of this stuff
Hmm.
is so important. So for you to actually have that realization, I think that's such an important step, as you mentioned, the awareness side of things, to be like your kids are watching, even though you
Hmm.
think they're not, they are watching, and it's so bizarre.
It's so random too how the memories that I have from my parents
Mm.
and sometimes the things that pop into my head from my parents because I don't know, everyone's story is different, but I had a really good childhood growing up. And so I have memories of my mom and I, when it was like Saturday morning, we would clean. It was like our cleaning, we would take 2 hours or so and clean. And we would turn on the Dixie Chicks and just like run around and dance while we were cleaning to make it fun because we knew we had all these responsibilities to get done, but we were just goofing off and playing in the meantime. And those are the things that your kids remember. They love play. They want to see you express yourself and like be comfortable, and it makes them comfortable because of that energy that they give off, right?
Mhm.
So,
No, I love
yeah.
that. So, can I just say this? Sort of linking it back to your experiences. Obviously, 4 years is a long time, or three,
Mhm.
not three. I think it's 3 years, 4 years to be in that hyper stressed, anxious state. Did you develop any unhealthy coping mechanisms during that time? Like because that's a long time to be struggling. So was there any way that
Sugar,
sugar? Yeah.
sugar, sweets. I yeah, eating out, sugar, which is so funny because you're in the health and fitness industry, right?
Hmm.
But these things start to take over. So that was the biggest thing for me. And then also, I started to want to spend more money, like shopping wise. I thought that was going to give me the gratification that I wanted. Like, oh, because I bought these clothes or that I did this, like I'm taking care of myself. And that's not really what it is. Like self-care is not really about buying clothes. Like it could be in a way, but we're talking about a much bigger picture here.
Mm-hmm.
So I just like relied on that stuff. I was like, yeah, I'm taking care of myself. And when you look at all the other moms out there and you see them struggling and you see them coping in different ways too, you're like, "Oh, this is normal," and you start to convince yourself that these things are normal. So, essentially, we're kind of feeding the monster,
Mm-hmm.
saying, "Oh, it's normal, this is the way you're supposed to live your life." And I always compare that to as people age and get older and they start needing a lot of medications because they don't prioritize physical fitness or nutrition, and it's so clear, but they accept it, "Well, I'm getting old. Like,
Mm-hmm.
this is normal for me."
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, "No, like, it's not normal." Like, so I think that is, like, the biggest message that I'm trying to get across to, honestly, moms, but anybody else in that category, right? Is realize that just because certain people are reacting a way around you doesn't mean that that is the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of like essentially, it's almost kind of like a cop out. Like we give ourselves that excuse, like, this is normal, it's fine.
Mm.
And we just
Even though
stop
even though
thinking.
we even though we know it's not,
Yes,
we
we
know it's
know
not.
it's not fine. Yeah.
It's like that. What's like?
So,
There's that experiment where they've got it's all controlled, and they've got two people waiting in a sat down waiting outside like a doctor's surgery or something, filling in forms, and they're all actors. And they bring
mhm.
someone in, and basically every time a bell rings, they've got to stand up, and then the
Yeah.
bell rings, they've got to sit down, and then the
Yeah.
person's a bit like, "What's going on here?" And then eventually, because everyone else is doing it, they start to do it as well, and they've got no idea why they're doing it. It makes no
Yep.
sense. There's no logic. There's no timing it. The bell's randomly rung, and they stand up and stand down, stand up, stand down. But they do it because everyone else in the room is doing it. And I feel like that's what people do. I can't remember what that experiment's called. There's loads of different examples of it. But I was thinking with this as well, there's another sort of string to this where because of the power of social media,
Yeah.
we have a lot of mums that are struggling that are then portraying to the outside world that they're not struggling. So then what we've got
Mhm.
is mothers that are struggling, going on social media and then feeling like an even bigger failure, which then potentially
Yep.
perpetuates them spending more, eating more, whatever their unhealthy coping mechanism is. It then exacerbates the problem because we're seeing this fake perception of reality that other mums that are struggling are putting out there. Not all the time, not all,
Right.
they're putting it out there, and then it's just perpetuating the problem.
Yes. Yeah. All the time. And I think it's so social media is one of those things where it is very it could be sort of detrimental if you're not careful. If you seek it's kind of going back to the physical fitness aspect and how I was saying how I wanted to nourish my body more and I was wanted to make that change more. But before, I was had connections and were followers and friends with all these people who had different lives than I did and didn't have the responsibilities I did, and watching their lifestyle and them achieve the results that I wanted, and I was comparing myself to those people, but I shouldn't because there's nothing that I could really relate to those people with, but just because I surrounded my environment with people who are getting those results and they're like, yeah, you can do it. But they didn't have the reality of the lifestyle I had.
Mm.
That is a really dangerous road to go down. And I actually, one of the things I recommend to my moms in my program is to go through their social media, and any like influencer or person that doesn't serve them or makes them feel negative about themselves, unfollow,
Mhm.
unfriend, because you need to surround yourself as best you can with an environment that's going to nourish what you want to go after.
I couldn't agree. I could not
So,
agree more. That's something that I talk
yeah.
about a lot as well. Like obviously, back in when I was doing the fitness coaching stuff and my modeling, my social media was just full of models, fitness influencers, personal trainers, and it was just relentless. And I just didn't
Hmm.
realize the impact that had on me. So when I
Yeah.
go and talk in schools, one of the biggest things I say is just we have that internal monologue when you're scrolling, because a lot of the time we don't realize what we're saying to ourselves, and we just get there and we get angry, bitter, jealous, frustrated, and we don't realize that that energy comes from the phone. We then put it down and we're taking that energy into our real world. And again, it affects our kids, it affects our partner, it affects our job, all that stuff. And it's just realizing that just go in there, just have a massive clear out. So now if you are caught on social media, because again, there's a lot of benefits to it, like I'm either laughing or I'm learning.
Yeah.
Only two things I'm on
Exactly.
there. And
Yeah.
yes, I can, again, I'm only human. I get caught on there, but at least I'm either
Yeah.
laughing, so it's positive, or I'm learning of some way,
Yeah.
shape, or form. And that's the thing for me. It's just like, what is that thing in your hand doing for you? Because there is some
Hmm.
amazing parent accounts where they will give you some amazing hacks and some amazing tips, and they help you understand the dynamic of your children. But then there's also your friend down the road who you know is struggling, but then she posts this amazing picture and you know it's fake, you know it's false, but you get inside your own head that somehow you're a failure and you're not good enough. And from all the mums that I've worked with and spoken to, I don't help them be better parents. I help them be better versions of themselves. But
Sure.
they
Yeah.
always feel like they're not good enough. Like every
Yep.
mum's common thing is they're doing it wrong. So
Yep.
I'm like, if you're getting that feeling every day anyway, why would you exacerbate that issue by going on your phone and comparing yourself to everyone else that's
Yep.
going through the same thing? For me, it's just a bizarre thing that once you said before, that awareness, once you gain awareness, you can then do something about it.
Hmm. And it is funny because it's a habit, because it's not like we go on there with the intention of comparing ourselves,
I'm gonna make myself feel miserable.
but
No.
then you're right. But then we scroll and then what we see, then that's like what sparks that. And we're like, oh, maybe I'm not doing this right. Or maybe I should get family pictures. What am I, and it's just we start giving ourselves more responsibility. And yeah,
Absolutely. So,
it's
what does it look like for you when people first come to work with you? Then, what's the first kind of few steps that you take people through to try and help them sort of regain a bit more control and sort of just sort of grab hold of the reins, as it were? Like, what's that kind of process look like?
well, the first thing I like to do is just I want to get them very clear on where they're at. Like, tell
Mhm.
me exactly where you're at, where your mental state's at, physically, how you feel about yourself. We just hash it all out. And I always ask, this is always confidential, it's in our contract. So the more you share, the better vision we can get and the clear transformation we can get, and the happier you'll be at the end, right?
Mhm.
And it still be like a sustainable thing for you. It's not going to just produce this random happiness, right? And so after we do that, then we get really clear on what kind of transformation they're wanting. Because what's interesting is they may come in and say, I want to lose weight, or I want to find a hobby. But then slowly it turns into, I just want to be a good mom for my kids. I want to be an awesome wife for my husband. And then I like dive into that. I'm like, well, what does it mean to be a good mom? What does being a good mom look to like to you? What does being an awesome wife look like to you? I mean, we're
Mhm.
really getting into the thick of it. And it's always something always comes up that they don't expect,
Mhm.
because what comes from like a little like weight loss issue thing, there's like so much that goes down that. Um, so the first step is identifying where they're at, transformation they want, and then that way we can get a direction on where we need to start.
Mhm. So I was writing that down there because we'll go back into it. I love what we said there about clear what they want about the vision. I think a lot of people struggle because they don't have a vision.
Yeah.
And I look back when I was struggling, my worst, my mental health, and I was struggling with depression. I had no purpose, had no vision, had no direction. The analogy that I used was I was literally a ship just sat there
Yeah.
bobbing in the sea of life. And that's one of the analogies when I talk to people with my clients is that you need to steer your boat. Like
Hmm.
you need to steer your boat in some form of direction. You need to know where you're going. That's what boats are designed for. If you don't have that direction, you're not saying you've got to know exactly the pinpoint to start off with where you want to go, but I want to move kind of in that direction. And the more you move into
Hmm.
that direction, you kind of like hone in. And I love what you sort of
Yeah.
said there about the sustainable transformation, because I
Yeah.
think a lot of people think this is an overnight thing.
Yep.
And I'll say, well, you didn't essentially brainwash yourself to this place of negativity overnight. It's not going to be undone overnight. There's so many paradigms, so many programs that are working underneath the surface that you
Hmm.
aren't even aware of. You don't know what you don't know. So this is going to be a long process. However, here's the things you need. So it's a long-term sustainable thing rather than let's link it to fat loss. Oh, I just want to lose X amount of weight. Okay, you get that. And then 2 months later, you're back to where you were again. What's the point? You wasted your time,
Right.
energy, effort, money. Like it's just, you don't want that.
Right. Yeah. And it's very, it's, it's very, once there, it's almost like a 2-in-1 type of thing too, because once they realize how deep this is and what kind of transformation that they want, they're like, oh, like, okay, this is a lot bigger of a thing than I thought it was going to be. And so sometimes I find that they need that reminder that it's not going to happen overnight a few weeks into it, because they start to experience a little bit more failure. They haven't experienced success yet because they're trying things out. They're still in the process of trying things out, trying different habits, trying different this, and it's not made a habit yet. So it just feels like they're poking around. And I just encourage them. I just say, hey, this is part of the process. This is part of change. We have to just keep going forward, using that persistence. Remember your transformation. Remember your transformation. Keep going forward. This is how it happens.
Mm,
It doesn't happen like saying, I'm going to change this one thing, and then you immediately obey. Nothing ever happens like that.
mm,
So, yeah, I love the talk about sustainability because it also provides way more value, and it also provides way more um, satisfaction in life, because that's why sometimes I struggle to use the word happy, because happy is thrown out there so much
mhm,
where it's like, oh, I'm going to order this sandwich because it makes me happy. I'm going to do this because it makes me happy. And that's just an instant gratification. That's
mm,
not wholesome. That's not fulfillment. So,
mm. And that's the thing for me. People say they want to be happy. Some of the biggest things, if you break it down to anything, like people want to win the lottery. Why? Because of this. Why? Why? Keep breaking down. Oh, and
mhm.
then I'll be happy is the thing.
Yeah,
Okay. But then this is then for me uh the thing that people don't realize with happiness. Like if you were happy all the time, it wouldn't be happiness.
yeah,
It'd be normal. So what I say to
yeah,
people is that you're not meant to be happy all the time. That's
mhm,
not how happiness works. What you really want to get to a place of contentment, where your baseline is, I am good. Like I'm a
yeah,
solid 8, 7, 8 out of 10, pretty much every day. Some things knock me, but that's I'm content, because you want to leave room to be happy, because that's the
yep,
whole point. You want to experience that happiness, where some people are like, oh, I just want to be happy. Well, no, that's not how it works. Like it comes
yeah,
and it goes, it ebbs and it flows. And I think for me, there's a really good quote. I can't remember where it comes from. I heard it in John Wick, but I'm sure it's something to do with
mhm,
American Marines or something. And it's
yeah,
si vis pacem parabellum. If you want peace, prepare for war. And for me, that's how I always envision this journey of transformation is. If you want the peace, if you want the contentment, you have to go to war with yourself, because you've
yep.
got to unpick so much stuff, and you're going to find out a lot about yourself, and you've got to take a lot of responsibility for potentially some of the stuff that you've done to yourself and the harm that you've done. And that can be really hard for people to actually stomach and swallow, to then actually move to the peace that they actually want.
True change is very humbling,
Hmm.
because I love that. I love what you said about you're essentially going to war with yourself, because you are going to essentially transform and change at the end. In order to be this person that you envision, you have to change a lot of things about yourself. So I, I just think that when people come in and want to work with people like you and I, I think there also has to be a clear vision of the role that you and I serve as
Mhm.
coaches. And some people envision this person of just accountability, like, oh, you're just holding me accountable. You're holding me accountable. And I'm kind of drawing away from that word because it's not really about accountability. It's about camaraderie and being there with you and knowing what you want to do and providing that direction, providing that emotional support if need be. And sometimes there is a little tough love, but it's in a very like soft way. It's not about like drill sergeant me telling you what to do,
Mhm. Mhm.
because I always express to people, and I can kind of sense that you're the same, that if you're looking for that drill sergeant, if you're looking for just accountability and this program exactly lined out with statistics and all of that, you've come to the wrong place,
Mhm.
because this is more about having a guide, someone who's an expert who knows and who has been there and usually can predict where your journey is going to take you, and having the support of that person
Mhm.
around you.
Mhm.
This is totally different than having that trainer or a drill sergeant or
Mhm.
something like that.
I love what you
So,
said there as well about the guide.
yeah.
I love that. That's
Yeah.
the for me the I don't know if you like Star Wars, but the analogy I always use is that I'm like Yoda. The
Yes.
client
Yeah.
the client's Luke Skywalker, and the thing is
Mhm.
as well. A lot of it is I think a lot of people when they sign up with a coach or mentor, not even in this space, in any space, whether it's trying to make money, start a new business, and they're like, oh, I'm going to hire a coach, mentor, whatever it is. They expect that person to somehow be like this knight in shining armor that's going to save the day. And it's like, that's not how this works. Like a coach, a mentor can only meet you at most 50% of the way. You
Mhm.
have to do your part. You have to go 50% of the way as well. Like no one,
Yep.
no coach or mentor can go past that 50%. Like you've got to actually want it yourself. You've got to actually want to do the steps, because no one can drag you, no one can make you do it. It's like you take a horse to water, you can't make it drink. And that's the thing. A lot of time people are like, oh, I've got a coach, they're going to fix me, they're going to save me.
Yeah.
No, I'm not here to save. Like,
Mm.
I'm not, no one knows you better than you know yourself. I can't tell you about yourself. All I can do is
Right.
just give you the steps. I can, like you said, just guide. I can be that sounding board for you. I can basically call you out on your own BS, because
Yes. Yeah.
no one else can BS you better than you can. So when someone can
Yep.
spot that and just be like, well, 3 weeks ago you said this, and I saying that, and the look on their face of
Yeah.
like, oh yeah. So what
Yeah.
would you say? What would you say some of the common um what are the common things that keep people stuck? So when they're starting on this journey,
Mhm.
because I imagine, again, this is me completely generalizing and potentially getting it wrong, is that the excuses will come out of I don't have time.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
What are the other common things that you get quite regularly, and how do you kind of combat that?
Yeah. One thing is like I feel like I don't have time. My schedule's not consistent enough to where I feel like I can make time. I feel very out of control. I don't know what to do. It's not necessarily about making like, I think they have in their thought in this head that the program is going to happen like this system.
Mm,
When we work together, it's going to happen like this system, and this is the way it's going to happen. And by week 4, I should be here and this or that, right? But like you said, they have to meet us 50% of the way. And depending on the person, it might be time that they struggle with, or it might be this mental block that they have. They're still holding on to those old habits and
mm,
those old like social cues that they have. They're surround themselves, they say they want to change, but they still surround themselves with this certain group of people that do not serve for that change. They actually serve against that change. They they start to realize that maybe they're going to have to change the community around them in order to get to where they want to be. And sometimes that's really hard for people because in the end we all want to resonate with other people. We want to feel like we belong. And there's this little period where sometimes you have to kind of sit back by yourself, and that is really scary for some people. They don't want to sit back by themselves and evaluate. They don't want to sit back by themselves and evaluate. They want to belong. And for them, that's really something that's important. So I would say that's when I recognize a client is at that stage where they have to sit back and look at themselves and they start to feel a little bit isolated or
Mm,
lonely because they're wanting different things and all the people around them want the same thing, but they're different.
mm,
And so they start to feel lonely,
mhm,
essentially. So then as a coach, I recognize that and we head in and say, "Hey, remember, this is about the big picture. This is about you. This is about your life. Like, yes, you're having these feelings right now. They're all valid. They're all, you know, like quote
mhm,
normal. It's to be expected. And just know this is part of the process. And you will find more relationships, more meaningful relationships down the road than you ever thought possible."
mm,
So like for myself, I'll use it as an example here because I'm willing to share and I have clients with confidential information, but I started to really sit back and I started to stop hanging out with certain people. And I've actually found more friends internationally, like all over the world, that I connect with way more. And we like boxer, like I have a fellow coach who works in Canada and I box at her like every day. And we talk about back and forth and just think I would have never thought that I would connect with somebody all over the world.
mm,
Right. So, and then I connect with my equestrian friends. I have these different connections, but I had to stop what I was doing and disconnect from the old world. And sometimes that process is really painful and it feels kind of lonely
mhm, mhm.
because people start to look at you and they're like, "What's going on with you?"
Why do you think you're better
And
than us? Mm,
yeah, you start to, I always say, once you start to emulate confidence and really come into your own, it draws out other people's insecurities.
absolutely.
And that is not your problem. Like other people's insecurities are not your problem.
Mhm,
And sure, there's hurt there because maybe you have like a personal relationship with this person, right? Or you've been friends with this person for a long time. But I just reiterate, it's all part of the process. This is normal. Like, this is what happens when you dig up all the roots and you're changing your life.
mm.
So I think that's one of the biggest struggles is time.
I
And then
just want
that
to pick up on
feeling of
that.
isolation. Yeah.
Yeah, that thing there, I just want to pick up on it because it's such a powerful thing. And again, for long-term listeners, you'll notice that a lot of the guests I have on, we all talk about the same sort of stuff. And that's a big one. We even mentioned on last week's episode with Bianca, is that once you step out of that comfort zone that you were in, you're highlighting to other people their, like I said, their own insecurities. And it can be
Mhm.
lonely. But the more you start to sort of level up and realize this is what I want, this is what I value, these are my values, this is what really fills my cup up, you will then connect with people on that level. And for me, if people are genuinely your friends, they will understand. They may not
Yeah.
get it, but they will understand, and
Yep.
they will still want to meet you for a coffee. They'll still want to meet you for a catch up.
Yep.
But then you start to notice actually a lot of these people, they only liked you because you enabled their behavior and they enabled your behavior. So you're just there in this little circle, this little eco bubble of negativity and hatred and bitterness and anger and jealousy and bitching. And you've sort of stepped out
Yep.
and you've kind of highlighted to them potentially some of their issues. But it's realizing that's, as you mentioned, that's natural, it's normal. And that isolation, I'm so glad you sort of mentioned it because some people can feel isolated, but that's what you're meant to do. You like when you go from one mountain to the other mountain, you've got to go down into the valley before you then go up to the next one. And it's that valley where people can get really, really lost and stuck and go back to their little safety net. It's like, no,
Yeah.
you've got to go through the valley, got to go through the valley until you get that next mountain. And that mountain's got more beautiful views.
Yes, it takes courage. I'm a
That's the
Lord
word.
of the
That's the word.
Rings. Yeah, I'm a Lord of the Rings nerd. So like I always compare it to you're Frodo, you're in Mordor, you're inside that mountain and you're throwing the ring in
Mm-hmm.
basically and saying I'm done. Like I'm so done with this. I'm so done carrying the load and it's a huge moment and it brings out qualities in you that you didn't know you had.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's part of the change process too. And sometimes people get, I mean, often, honestly, people get very emotional because that feeling of feeling out of control returns. But this is completely different. This is completely different. This is like a good, like yes, this is a good uncomfortable.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I promise it will lead to the transformation you want, right?
Hmm.
So,
You sort of keep reiterating yourself, like, what is it you're trying to get to? Have that vision of yourself. And for me,
yeah,
I was there's a formula that I talked to you about. It's like be times do equals have. So you want to have this end result. You first have to become the person that can do the stuff to have that result. And you can't
yeah,
become a different person if you're in that same environment. So you've got to step out and become this different version of yourself. You've got to be a new version of yourself. And when you start to do that, you will then have the result that you ultimately want. But
yeah.
stepping out
And
and
you
being
have,
that new version is different. It's hard.
yes. And the one of the biggest steps I find that I, as a coach, often have to tell people is surround yourself with people who also want to make that change. If you
Yes.
can find somebody who wants to make that change and you form this sort of relationship with each other, that's up leveling to a whole different category, because
Mm.
it's like you now are evolving and forming this community to support where you want to go instead of just relying on one coach, right?
Mm.
So,
You almost then hold each other accountable in a way, and in a positive way. It's a very
yeah.
it's a very positive, empowering level because that old saying, "A rising tide raises all ships." So actually, if
Mhm.
you've got someone on the same journey as you, and you notice they're slightly ahead of you, oh, well, what are you reading? What are you learning? Oh, I'm doing this, and then you overtake them, and then say to you, "Oh, wow, what are you doing? What are you learning?" And then you kind of hold each other in a really positive, accountable way, and you kind of both grow and evolve together. And as you're sort of
Mhm.
going, as you mentioned, that community comes because more people will get involved, and it can become a really sort of nice symbiotic relationship.
Yes, yeah. And then your relationships that you have are now way more meaningful. They're tied to personal things. You're also helping that
Yes.
individual too. So humans crave connection. I've always believed that we are social beings. We have to have connection. It doesn't matter what your personality's like, if you're a quote extrovert or introvert, you have to have connection. Otherwise, we feel isolated, we feel lonely. That leads to down a whole nother road where you don't want to be. So,
Hmm. Hmm. So,
yeah.
but sort of jump myself in a listener's shoes here. So a mother listening to this, she's thinking, right, so I need to sort of like level up and sort of find this new group, as it were. What
Mhm.
are some places and ways that people can find that? Because again, as
Mhm.
mothers, as we mentioned, they don't have a lot of time. So they're not going to go around like actively searching and joining groups. So I
Yeah.
know you sort of mentioned about stuff to do with the horses, so maybe getting a hobby. But is there another way, another path that you have found with your clients that kind of helps them find this new community, this new group? Is there sort of ways, strategies, and tactics that people can actually start to connect with other people that align more with them?
Yeah. So, one of the ways you actually mentioned it, but through your hobby, that we find whatever your passion is, you connect with those people. And sometimes you don't have necessarily the same kind of transformation in mind, but you have like a similar goal in common. So with my group of horseback riding people, we all have this goal in common that we just want to be better riders. We want to be able to be safe. We want to know horse cues and be educated that way. And in talking about that, we actually talk about other life stuff. And I have found out that I have way more in common with them than I initially thought I did.
Mm.
And so it's really just about exposing yourself to different communities. And so specifically, what that means is not only through your hobbies, but it also means getting involved in different communities, like not necessarily like giving you more to do, but like going to events with your kids, like
Mm.
bringing your kids along, meeting fellow moms, putting yourself out there. Because
Mm.
that's the other thing that we have to remember from the courage aspect is that if you want to change, you got to put yourself out there. And that's very scary for moms because we already feel like we're being judged 24/7. But there has to be this sort of agreement in your mind that if you want to change, you have to get out there and like look what's around you. There's actually a lot of offerings and support groups, mom support groups around different, like around in my area,
Mhm.
for example, that I was not aware of. Like there's this meetup like play group about 30 minutes away that they just say, come as you are, bring your kid. We hang out at the playground and we just talk about all kinds of life stuff, right? So I found them actually by going to an event with my kids and getting involved, like asking parents, start being your own advocate. So it's really hard for me to like pinpoint a certain like path or avenue to form those relationships because everybody's schedule looks a lot different. But the more you talk about it and, like, the more you bring it up and say, I'm really looking to get into this. Do you know anybody
Mm,
who is involved with this?" And you put yourself out there.
mm,
And the more you put it out there into the universe, the more you're gonna find it.
mm.
You're gonna find it eventually. So,
Also, something that's
you
popped.
don't.
Also, something that popped into my head there when you're talking as well is also if you've
Yeah.
got a child that's at school age, talking to other parents on the playground, like when you go
Mhm.
to pick the child up, because again, from my limited experience of doing that, like there's loads of different groups of kind of people there, and any
Yeah.
sort of meetups and stuff that parents have within the school, you maybe just again just a conversation you have, and it's not necessarily connect
Yeah.
with that person, but they may have a connection or an idea. It's like, oh, I didn't realize that that group was a thing, or that
Yeah.
place offered that, and it's just put, as you said, putting stuff out there, because there's a really nice quote that I like: if nothing changes, nothing changes.
Yeah.
So again,
Yeah.
even if you're an introvert, it's like, and again, there's nothing wrong with being an introvert, but again,
Right.
communication is the number one tool that will open up doors for you. So again, it's just practicing and putting yourself out there, not necessarily for you as well, but and this is always something that I used to leverage with clients. If you can't do it for yourself, do it for your kids, because
Mhm.
they need you to step into that better version of yourself for them further down the line. So the whole thing is everyone wants to be a better parent. So again, it's like that sort of thing. Like, okay, well, if you're struggling to do it for yourself, do it for your kids. And then something
Yep.
tends to just click with someone. They're like, okay, right, yeah, and I've got to do this. I've got to do this. And then they find this bit of courage to use your word. Use that courage to actually, no, I will just reach out. I will connect with that person. And it's just so empowering when you start to take those proactive steps. And then more importantly, you notice the results and the positivity that actually brings. And then reconfirming to yourself that, oh yeah, I can talk to people. The world didn't
Yeah.
end. Oh, that was a really
Yeah.
good connection. This is great.
Yeah, and you know what's funny is sometimes when you connect with those people and you put yourself out there and bring up that topic, they may they may not know a resource, but they be man like, "Man, I want that too. Like,
Mhm.
I'm gonna start looking." And then if they find something, they're gonna be like, "Hey, remember how we talked about this? I found this," you know? And so you're not only impacting yourself and like bringing back those results to yourself, but you planted a seed and you gave that person an idea of how to change themselves.
Mhm.
So
Mhm. And then
yeah, it's a
vice
beautiful
versa as
thing.
well. Like what you said is that actually this
Mhm.
is a person. Oh, I'd love that for myself, and then you find it, and then you
Yeah.
pass it on to that person. Wow, now you've actually helped empower somebody else as well. So it's kind of like this full circle thing. I think it's just a beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful thing. Final question here, because by the way, like, this has been fantastic. This conversation has been absolutely amazing. So one final question I normally tend to ask my guests. I'm going to make it more specific to sort of what you do. And again, we've covered a lot here, so you can either
Yes.
summarize what you've said or go out with a different answer, whatever feels natural for you. But what bit of advice would you give to a mother right now that does feel a bit stuck, does feel a bit out of control, and doesn't know what to do next?
First question I would ask is just what do you want to change? Remove all the barriers. So stop stopping yourself. Remove all the barriers. Think like a child again. What do you want? What do you want?
Mm,
Do you want to have more time like with your kids? Do you want to have more time for yourself? And just list it all out. What do I want? What do I want? And don't think about how you're going to get there at this point because then you're just going to shut yourself off completely. So just list it about what do you want for your life? How do you want your life to look? And start there because usually, and kind of reiterating what I said earlier, usually if you start there, it'll become clear what kind of transformation you want. And then you can go out and seek the help you need, and you'll know exactly what kind of help that you need
mm,
instead of searching around for random people like I want to get healthy so I'll have a personal trainer. I want to get healthy so um I'll sign up for this mom group and I want to do this and already you're making yourself really busy.
mm.
And you
So
don't
it
even
gets even
really
more,
you don't
more
even
chaos.
yeah, you don't even really know what you want, you know? So just list out what you want first.
Mm. That's a
Yeah.
big thing. People just don't allow themselves to just think and dream. As you mentioned, they're too busy. Oh, I can't do
Yeah.
that. Don't worry about the hows and the whys. Just figure out
Mhm.
what. Because for me, and I guess what I teach my clients is once you figure out what it is that you want, the hows will take care of itself. but you've got to have that intention. You've first got to set that intention. It's something I also mentioned quite a bit recently, is the disruption follows intention, which kind of also
Yeah.
summarizes what we've said before, is that when you set that intention of becoming a better version of yourself or going down this path, the disruption will follow, because
Yeah.
you've destroyed the status quo and you've rocked the boat. And that's okay. That, again, my belief, that's the universe's way of just testing you. Do you really want that thing you said you do? And for me, you've got to keep on taking one step at a time, one step at a time. And again, it will come good. Kate, honestly, this has been a fantastic episode. Like, you've had some real value here, and it's been brilliant. Where can people find out more information about you, to connect with you or to reach out if they want to work with you?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned earlier, it's important to surround yourself with people who have a positive vision and who are going to promote the kind of environment that you need to be around to get to where you are. Get to where you are. So, if you want, you can follow me on Instagram, and it's actually under my company name. It's called Fuel for Impact. So it's fuel underscore for underscore impact. And then you can also find me on Facebook. Um, I post a lot of just random tips and content, and I actually post a lot of hilarious things about my kids as well, to show you that my life is also messy and not perfect. And as moms, we're constantly adapting. I don't believe in the word balance when it comes to being a mom. It's just constant adaptation, but just being solid inside and having that light back. So, yeah, I'd love to connect.
I love that. I love that adaptation. That's a real
Yeah.
thing. That's just constantly. There's no, you can't balance anything, because again,
No.
if anyone's got any kids or been around kids, they are, again, their own little bundle of chaos. So you just can't do it. So the adaptation, and again, it's, as you sort of mentioned, having that strong backing of yourself, knowing who you are, what you're doing, why you're doing it, to then actually have that as that solid foundation to then let the fluidity come with it all changing every single day. So, no, honestly, Kate, this has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much for your time today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.